And this is a thing that you generally only find out afterwards, which is what makes it possible is to just start. That is the thing that gets in the way. It's the first step of any journey, is by far the hardest step. You can't get there without a little bit of practice.
Yeah.
If you're gonna practice on something, you might as well practice on something that you like.
We've got critically acclaimed content creator and artist, award-winning photographer, literally a living legend of our industry. He influenced the influencers, including myself and so many others. Before there was a Peter McKinnon talking about the perfect shot, or a Casey Neistat doing camera reviews and talking about his gadgets, this man paved the way for so many. I'm excited to have him on Video Influencers, the author of best-selling book, Creative Calling, the Chase Jarvis. Thank you so much.
I'm so psyched to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I know that.
Fellow Seattleites.
Seattle.
There's not too many of us out there.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And of course, you and I know that Seattle's a fun place, but there's not a lot of creators doing what we're doing here as much as other cities like
Sure,
LA.
LA or New York.
But I think one thing that you and I could agree is everybody wants to create things, right? Like they're hungry to take photos and make videos and get onto social media. Anything you want to start us off with in terms of your thoughts on where the industry and the community is at right now?
Well, I'm going to go even beyond the industry. I think the industry is a subset of what I'm about to say, which is there is a creator in all of us. Whether you believe it or not, acknowledge it, human beings, we are creating machines. It's what separates us from all the other species on the planet.
Yeah.
We have the ability to take two totally disparate things, put it together, and make something new, whether that's a piece of art, a business, or even like this conversation. We're co-creating this conversation right now. So, my background, I remember my second grade teacher, I overheard her tell my parents that Chase is so much better at sports than he is at art. And right now, if you're a normal human, you're like, oh man, step on that poor little second grader's throat. Like, Miss Kelly, what are you thinking? But the reality is that I didn't actually have a negative reaction at the time. I just said, okay, great, then I'm doing sports, because as a second grader and as just a human in general, we all we're social animals. We all want to fit in and connect and be a part of the tribe. And so I did that at the cost of, I can't even measure, I ran away from so much, I think, humanity and so many parts of me that I celebrate now, the ability to have an opinion and put it out there and explore who I am and who I want to become and share it with the world. That's just an amazing creative process. And to find out and to be aware that there are people in the world who either are neutral or believe that they're not creative, that has been a huge mission in my life, to help people, anyone, not just someone who identifies as a creator, but help even those who don't understand that they're creative. And that's one of the reasons that I wrote the book, and that's why Creative Live exists, where more than 10 million people go to learn about creativity and photography and design.
And so I love that story because, when I was in second grade, ironically, I was at an elementary school that was an art school. Even though I came from that, obviously I didn't end up a photographer like yourself. And the reason I love that contrast is even if you start late, you can start now. And so I think that's one of the things you just mentioned. You want to not just convince, but really help people to aspire to be the best versions of themselves. Can you talk a little bit about why it's not too late? And secondly, why being creative is so important in this day and age?
Well, two-part question. First part is, we all have this. It's indubitable. If you walk into any first or second grade classroom and say, who wants to come to the front of the room and draw me a picture? How many hands go up? Every single hand goes up. And, that's just one basic empirical test to know that we're all creative. And then because we are taught that somehow creativity is not practical, that we need to go do something else and get a job. And the reality is that creativity is the most practical thing you can do, because, success isn't found. We use the word, oh, did they find success? No, success is created. And, why we are not taught that is simply because we've had a very, very narrow definition of creativity. We thought that creativity is the pipe cleaners and popsicle sticks and, glue and glitter. But in reality, that's art. And art is just a teeny subset of all creativity. As we talked about just a second ago, we're co-creating this conversation right here, creating a business, creating a family, a living, and a life. Those are all creative acts. And when you reframe what it means to be creative in those terms, it's so easy to expand the definition. And I guess my mom is a really, really good example. She had a lot of responsibility as a very young person. She was basically the head of the household as arguably before she was a teenager.
Yeah.
And a bunch of individual circumstances for her, and so she was raised with this just hardcore practicality and more of just analytical, and these are the words that she used to describe herself, which is virtuous for sure. But it wasn't until I think she was 60, 65, something like that, and I had developed an iPhone app called Best Camera,
Yep.
which was at the time the first iPhone app that allowed you to take a picture, add an effect, and share it to the first ever social network, which was just about photography. And it went on to be the app of the year in 2009. There's a lot of lore about it on the internet, Instagram before Instagram, and whatnot. The part that I'm trying to share here is that I gave my mom an iPhone, and with this app that at the time was like $3. It was back when you paid for apps.
Crazy.
And she, in no extra time, she didn't have to move to Paris, didn't have to get a new set of friends, didn't have to do anything. She just started taking photographs on her afternoon walk at lunchtime. Kept her normal job, kept her set of friends. She started taking pictures and then sharing them on her Facebook page. And in a matter of weeks, not days, not minutes, but also not months or years, her friends started commenting and saying, "Oh my God, Joy, you're so creative." And I watched it in a very short amount of time, again, a matter of weeks, transform how she thought. I watched it affect so many different areas of her life. Like she started cooking different food and experimenting. Instead of just going to the normal vacation place that our family would always go to, she wanted to travel to China and Turkey and Africa, and it really changed her in a fundamental way. And at the beginning of it was photography. It was just taking pictures. And so to watch someone who's 65 discover creativity in a matter of days or weeks was just a light bulb for me. And, I think that, for the first part of your question, and if that can have that impact on a 65-year-old who doesn't actually even define themselves as a creator, wouldn't use that word, to watch it have that profound effect. And now she's an ardent champion, of course, as you might imagine.
We're creating right now.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, they look at creating as like the traditional sense,
art.
Painting a picture, right? Or making music, even, photographer, editing a video. But there's so much. And, before this interview, I was talking about, some people would think this is conspiracy theory, but it's not. Artificial intelligence and computers are getting so much better that they're taking over tasks that we don't need to do anymore. It's actually freeing us up to be more creative. Yeah. So that's my question, what's the importance of creativity in this new world of ours, outside of the obvious, like Instagram, YouTube, and social media?
Yeah, I believe deeply, and there's a lot of science and social study and belief of people who are even futurists that understand that given that our creativity is one of the things that sets us apart, and given that AI and just computing power has the ability to basically take any very repetitive task, and those tasks are going to become lower and lower quality with respect to how a human can and or should do them. Machines will actually be better than humans at it. What it does is it puts creativity on a spectrum that's as far away from where AI currently is as any other object, as emotion, as connection. And to me, that is a profound reason. For God's sakes, if there's no other reason to pursue creativity, which I think that there's a litany, just the fact that it is going to, be another thing that differentiates us from the machines. And I think a really interesting data point is a year ago, or maybe it was 2 years ago now, at the World Economic Forum, Jack Ma, who's the founder of Alibaba, which is a gigantic store in the East, and arguably the same or larger than Amazon. And you could say that he is obviously very, very, very data-centric. Someone at the World Economic Forum asked him about what he's teaching his kids, all about coding, and his response is so telling and amazing. He's like, "Oh, my kids? Oh, no. My kids, they're not, writing code because, computers are already writing code for themselves. Like a robot, when a hand of a robot bumps into the table, it is writing code on the fly to tell what it learned to the other hand. So if computers are already able to write code, and even though that may be in its infancy, but Jack Ma says, my kids, we're teaching them everything that's not that machines aren't good at, like human connection, emotion, art, physicality. Like these are elements, and specifically he talks about art, and art in terms of painting and self-expression as a vehicle for the future of humanity. And I just think it's really interesting for someone who ought to identify with the machines maybe more than anybody. So if for no other reason than to be in control of your future, pursuing creativity, whether it's as a profession or as a hobby, is absolutely fundamental and foundational, and couldn't be more critical than it has ever before been.
It's a great example, because I mean that's probably one of the wealthiest people in the world, and like you would just assume like just send them to school to learn math or the traditional subjects, but more and more, I mean, it's pretty obvious. I mean, me being a vlogger, YouTuber, a content creator, ultimately I understand, but creativity doesn't have to just stop at social media, right? Like it can extend into everything we're doing. Like you mentioned, even this is a creative process, a collaboration to create something new, right? Something that a machine potentially can't. On that note, like going even more practical, there's probably somebody out there watching. We have a lot of viewers on video influencers who want to start channels, but they're fearful, or maybe they have no experience. What would be your quick tips in terms of how to get started creating? So we're talking specifically now photography, video, whether it's on YouTube, all the way to TikTok and everything in between. What would be your advice in terms of creating content?
So many a creator, if you ask this question, would unite around one simple idea. And this is a thing that you generally only find out afterwards, which is what makes it possible is to just start. That is the thing that gets in the way. It's the first step of any journey, is by far the hardest step. And because just think about the rules of science and like inertia. Going from a dead stop to starting, once you're in motion, it's easier to stay in motion. So I would say, firstly, that just starting to explore what it is that you're passionate about, curious. If you don't know what you're passionate about, what you're curious about. If you're curious about, where do you spend time doing? Where do you apply effort? And on accident, like what's happening naturally, and where would you like to spend more time and effort and energy? If you just start to pull on that thread, on the other side of that is something that is so beautiful. So the first thing is just start. And the second thing is when you do something for the first time, and you're able to look back on that, there's something beautiful happens. Is all of that fear, like the reason that we don't start is because of fear. And first, all the best stuff in life is on the other side of fear. The second is, don't worry, it's okay, because we have this biology, and our biology has a negative bias. It's programmed to look for fear. That is part of what has kept our species on the planet, right? So our psychology is literally hardwired to look for saber-toothed tigers on the horizon.
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you there are no more saber-toothed tigers. Sure, are there things that can go wrong in the world, and are there bad things or people? Of course, that happens. But the reality is that 99% of the things that are hardwired to us biologically they don't impact us. And to be totally blunt, the number of people that like your Instagram post or your YouTube video, that's not actually a saber-toothed tiger. So if you go back to my first principle, which is just start. When you start, something tiny happens inside of you. You start to retrain your brain and your biology to say, wait a minute, that wasn't so bad. And when you go to do it a second time, all the same fears are going to come up. You're going to go, I don't know, I didn't, only 3 people watch my video, or I only got 5 likes or whatever. And if you look fear in the face and you do it anyway, another one of those little bits flips, and you're beginning to teach yourself. You're beginning to learn that just one click above the fear and the shame and the things that you're worried about, doing that action, just have 1% more willingness to do the action than to succumb to the shame. And then you've started in momentum. And that momentum is pure gold.
Yeah, the momentum is so key. So on that note, I did watch your TED Talk from a whole decade ago, right? And you mentioned something like, hey, I'm not going to get into it here on this TED Talk, but you said, if you're creating and you're not feeling fear, then you're probably not pushing hard enough. And you literally said right afterwards, I'm not going to go into it. Can you go into why that is so important, that level of fear, and why that is kind of the entrance into whatever it is that is success?
No fear equals no growth. And if you're just doing things that don't make you uncomfortable, we're talking about, I get in a 40-degree ice bath every day. I have one, like a freestanding one built at my house specifically to do this, to train a willingness to be uncomfortable. Sure, there's all kinds of other health benefits, antidepressant, anti-inflammatory, all those things, but the number one reason that I do it is to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And if you believe, as I do, that all the best things in life are on the other side of fear, asking that person out on a date, taking a risk and pursuing your passion, showing up at a place where you're not sure what other people are going to think, but you are willing to go there and experience it for yourself. All those little moments, to me, those are the first steps of all of the best things in life. And in that horrible talk from 10 years ago, I said that because I believe that's a whole talk in and of itself. And as you know from reading the book, I talk a lot about the best stuff in life being on the other side of fear and learning how to manage it. It's just like anything else. It's just like, public speaking or learning how to cook a meal. You can't get there without a little bit of practice.
Yeah.
If you're going to practice on something, you might as well practice on something that you like.
Yeah.
Because that's going to help you go find that moment again where, again, your willingness to do it is just one click above the shame that you think you might feel if you fail.
It's interesting that you thought it was a bad talk, because the reason I asked that question was because I really wanted to know. I mean, I was so intrigued by everything you were talking about in a way, and I mean, if you have to really dig for this talk, but the reason I bring it up, it really is this.
It's early, yeah.
It's the early version of your book. Do you want to talk about, real quick though, creative calling and why this really applies not just to photographers, videographers, creatives, or entrepreneurs in social media, that there's so many principles of life, but what would you want people to know about this book?
I love the nature of the question, because I would be fibbing if I didn't say that's one of the reasons I wrote it. I wrote it as, it's a little bit of a Trojan horse. You get sucked in by, the concept of creative. And it's really written for two people who identify as creators or are creative curious. Like, there's something in it you're not quite sure about. What I discovered in deconstructing my own successes and failures, my now 11 or 12 year running podcast, Chase Jarvis Live and Here Creative Live, I've had the chance to sit, as you have, with so many of the world's top creators and entrepreneurs, and now call them my friends or their mentors or inspirators. And these are the Richard Bransons and the Brene Browns and, the Tim Ferrisses, and just people that I think have helped really shape our current universe, not just online either, but they're just creators who have really made an indelible mark on our culture. When you deconstruct their lives, what you start to see is that they have pursued things that they were so passionate about, or they had questions about, or concerns, or they wanted to explore it. And it is the actual path of pursuing that unlocked so much for them. So when I started thinking about, wait a minute, what is it, my own experiences, the experiences of folks like that, when people found success, or rather created success, what were they doing? And it just so happened that there was a very simple and what I found to be repeatable process. And that takes, this big nebulous idea of pursuing what you love into basically a step-by-step process that anyone can follow, and it's only 4 steps. And so I found this to be true. I found it true with the success of any of the creators that would call my friends or whatnot, and it was a simple framework: IDEA. Imagine, and that is imagine what's possible. What do you want to make happen in this world or in this project or whatever? Design a series of steps to get there. Like, a house doesn't build itself. You have to have a plan. If you just start hammering boards together, it's not going to go very well. D for design. E, execute that plan, because if you have a vision and you make a plan but you don't do anything, you're not going to get anywhere. And then the last thing that I noticed in my own work and in the work of all these other, all-time, thought leaders, is amplify. You need to amplify this idea, make it bigger than yourself, and that is really another sort of an idea around community. So when I looked at this system, IDEA, not only does it spell idea,
Perfect.
and those are the 4 sections of the book, but that is literally a framework for how to approach anything specific, any project, whether you want to start a YouTube channel, build a business, even a dream that you have for a family or a meal or literally anything that you can, quote, create. If you approach it with those 4 steps in mind, then that is a formula for success. Now, here's the ninja shit, which is that applies to any project, but it also applies to life. That is why that book it's trying to be seductive to creators, but it's when you're in like the first third of it and you realize that not only is this a recipe for how to start a YouTube channel or make a video, but it's a recipe for a life well lived. And the people that you respect and admire and you look up to online, or that your neighbor or the local, corner grocery store vendor, whoever inspires you, their life didn't happen on accident. They imagined what was possible, they made a plan to do it, and they executed against that plan, and they got other people involved. So when you start to realize that, to me, that's the big unlock, is in creating in small daily ways through art and video, whatnot. It's only that way that you understand that, that is how you create the life of your dreams. And one last point there is, if you believe, as I said earlier, that everyone's creative, and you believe that creating in small daily ways, like what we're doing here, building a business, is the way to understand that you can create your life, it stands to follow that creativity then is like a muscle. And it, like anything else in life, the more you use it, the stronger it gets, the better it gets. And that's why I think of creativity as a habit. It's not a skill. That's why you don't have to be a great painter, poet, photographer, filmer. You don't have to be those things today. You just have to start to get in the habit of creating something small, and that will unlock the ability to create something of your dreams.
Amazing. That's like the mic drop moment right there. And I know you're a humble person. However, I mentioned earlier, there wasn't any one guest, even someone like Gary Vaynerchuk, who's been so influential in this space and kind of came out of nowhere. But I've never had a guest that so many of my friends and colleagues were so excited to see the interview of. And they're like, do you know how lucky you are that you got that interview? I'm like, I feel lucky every time I have an interview with anyone because I get to dive into someone's life. But for you specifically, my question, again, it's a little bit of a curveball. How does it feel to be an influencer of influencers, that you've influenced not just a generation that's younger, but literally everybody in this industry? You were so early on the scene, and of course, there's so many stories, including the whole the app that you created, and how that influenced other apps, Instagram, but even like you reviewing cameras. I know that in your last video, you're kind of talking smack about your suitcase video, and like how like last minute you created it, but it went on to have like tens of thousands of views. How does it feel to be somebody that has literally like spread so much, not to be cheesy, but positivity and creativity to help build even bigger things beyond what you could have done by yourself?
Well, thank you for all those nice things to say. That's nice. I do not think about any of that for a second. Not 1 second of my day is consumed with that. And I think, hopefully the most important thing I will say in this video is coming right now, and that is the ability or desire to be an influencer for the sake of influence alone is an empty dream. That is literally like wanting the Ferrari because you saw it in a video. Like there's nothing there. And so just having influence for the sake of no other reason than the concept of possessing influence is not a thing that's going to, if that is the reason, just put that on pause for a second, and I would encourage you to look at something that's just a little to the left or to the right of that view, and it's this. What is it that you want to do? And it's in doing the thing that you create influence. It is my passion was to write my own script because I realized in my life as a young 20-something person that everyone else had an interest in writing the script for me. my college counselor, my parents, my friends, my relatives.
Even society.
Yeah, culture in general. And, there was this, I need to act like this, walk like this, talk like this, go to this school. And I was busy doing those things because, again, we're social animals and we want to fit in, until I realized that it was leading me towards down a path that didn't actually cultivate happiness. And it only, I only became aware of that through a couple of really traumatic events. One was the death of my grandfather. He dropped dead of a heart attack a week before my college graduation, and he was an avid photographer, and so I was given his cameras, and I just felt this instant connection and desire to explore my own creativity when I had, as I said earlier in the interview, my second grade teacher told me to pursue sports. And I did, and I went to college on a soccer scholarship. I could have played football and whatnot. I was in the Olympic development soccer team, and yet when my grandfather died, I was like, this is a part of me that I've been ignoring. For me to decide to pursue photography, that was the thing that was truly interesting to me, and was the seed of what ultimately manifested as, if you would say, influence. And it's so easy to have influence when you're pursuing something for which you have a ton of energy, and when you're authentically, and in your heart of hearts, that's what you're supposed to be doing. There's no feeling like it, and if you haven't felt it and don't know what I mean right now, I'm especially talking to you that you need to start looking for it. For those of us who are blessed to know what we're supposed to be doing with our life, you're 95% of the way there, and now all you have to do is do that thing. For a huge section of people who are listening right now and you don't know, your job is to find out those things. And it may be weird and quirky and not the thing that your parents or your career counselor or your mom or dad or brother or sister or friends want you to do. You know what? That's okay, because your life is not a democracy. So influence for influence's sake is something I never think about. I think about, how can I be the most maximally in service of the world? And it just turns out that's doing the things that we were put on this planet to do.
Yeah.
And so it's been pure joy and luck and all downstream benefit to actually have found that thing. And here's the other magic bit about that, and you know this, is that people can feel it. When you're doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing,
Yeah.
and you tap into that part of yourself, you're around people, you can feel it. And that's the energy that you feel from Gary or myself or any person that you feel like has added value to you. You just know they're speaking their truth. And I just think that is a often overlooked world in where influence has value in the marketplace and in pop culture. But man, if you chase it for just the sake of influence, I promise you'll get there. And well, first of all, what is there? You'll always be chasing something, because if it's like saying, I want money, then, you're never, when you have that much money, you're never gonna, there's always more money to be made. So I think that's a hollow pursuit. But instead, if you can pursue something that deeply means a lot to you, and you can do that if you can spend your time doing that, that is going to unlock, there's more influence or opportunities for influence there than anything else. And it's a really exciting time, to be fair. The gatekeepers are largely, dissembled, and, no longer do we need permission from the gallerist to show our art or the media outlet to publish something.
It's the path itself that creates the destination that so many people aspire to, right?
Sure.
It's not the destination itself.
Right.
And sometimes you don't even know what the destination is, right?
So that's a cool thing, is most people, and I understand why, but most people, they want this roadmap. If I do this and this and this, they need to see all the steps along the way, and then I will magically have the thing that I want. I don't know anybody whose life looked like a roadmap that we received in junior high. It's wildly different, right?
Yeah.
And what we actually have is we're sold maps, and they're terrible guides. What we have inside of us is a compass. And if we can learn to trust this compass, and this compass, if you do something and it feels good or it doesn't feel good. If it gives you energy and you expand or you contract, then you feel scared or harmed or less than. And to me, this ability to tune into this compass and not see the whole map. The thing about a compass is it just points that way, and all I can see when I go that way right now is a wall. And I gotta believe that on the other side of the wall is another room, and then on the other side of that room is a street, and on the other side of that street is a bigger street, and that, and then there's an ocean, and then if I just start walking that direction, that's where we truly uncork and discover what's passionate or what connects and makes us sing. So if you can start to pay attention to that and trust it, it's not about seeing the whole staircase or every step from A to B. It's just about seeing the next few. And that's scary to some people, but go back to what we said about fear earlier, B. That's where all the best stuff is.
Bro, this is amazing. I feel like we could we could talk for hours. Now that everybody has a camera in their pocket and DSLRs are becoming more affordable, and it seems as if you become somebody that's interested in YouTube or social media, you start getting gear. So people feel that it's too competitive. People always are asking me, like, is it too late? I always tell them it's not. But what would your advice be to people that are just starting, or even professionals who don't know how to set themselves apart? Like, what are the things that you're seeing are open opportunities, or what are the principles that help people moving forward, especially if they get inspired from this interview or your book?
I'm a huge fan of not just being incrementally better than another one of your peers or someone in the marketplace, but being different. Different not just for the sake of being different, but for the sake of celebrating the human that you are. Like, you out there, like, there's only one person that has your DNA, that has lived your life experience, and that is your differentiating quality. And it's understandable that we see people that we admire and we emulate work that we do, and that's part of the learning process. So I'm not trying to say don't emulate it, but what I am, trying to say unequivocally is your secret sauce is undeniably, unapologetically being yourself. And for right now, when you're trying to be like everybody else, and it's understandable, it's natural, it's okay, but if you can break through that phase, what people want more than anything is the unique you. That is your personal style. When people hire creators in the marketplace, they don't just, anyone with a heartbeat and a finger can be a camera operator. No, they hire people who tell a story in a way that inspires them. And you shouldn't be for everybody. If you're trying to be for everybody, you'll ultimately end up being for nobody. And yet the flip side of that is, if by contrast you are unapologetically you tell stories from parts of you that are truthful and authentic to who you really are, and it's scary as shit at first, but it's only through repeating that process, taking so many photographs, making so many videos, that you can stop thinking about the way that you say it, because it's undeniably you. You could only say it in the way that you can say it. You can't say it in any other way, or it immediately starts to ring false to you. That is a thing called personal style, and that is what people are attracted to. They're attracted to personal style. They're attracted to someone. That's one of the reasons we love rock stars, because they pour their heart and soul out for us on stage. That is one of the reasons we fall in love with YouTubers, because it's all of their quirks and the relationship that you have with them, and that you see enough of them in you that you realize that you have that same zhuzh, that same je ne sais quoi that they have, except it's in your own language. And here's the kicker, that it's the thing that nobody wants to hear, but is the biggest truth of this little rant here, is that you can only discover that personal style through repetition. If you think you can just, find that thing and put a pin in it with making one video, you're crazy. In 150 videos from now, you're gonna start to feel it. And that's why I recommend you just get to work, because your first video, you're gonna say, that wasn't really that weird. I did this wrong and that didn't feel right. And on the 100th one, you're gonna say the same thing. And then by the time you've made 200 videos, you start to say, like, that's what I meant to say. And that creative gap is gonna go from this, what you thought you could make and what you do make, and it's gonna shrink to zero. And it's in that moment that you will understand what it means to be, like, speaking your truth and, standing out. This is what it means to stand out in a crowded marketplace. This is what it means to, there's a woman that I profile in my book who had her first show, I think she was 89, and she had a retrospective at the Whitney at 101 years old. So it's never too late. You can never go too far down a path to not come back. And whether you're in a job that you hate, a relationship that you hate, or just generally unhappy, that's why going back to this thing that makes us unique, is our own ability to create something. If you can turn to that as a daily practice, imperfect, just Anne Lamott, who's a writer, says shitty first drafts. So you can just start to put out some shitty first drafts, then you're going to start to connect with who you really are as a creator, and that's when the magic starts.
And you say it in Creative Calling, there's no getting around the volume, right?
True.
Which I love that you're saying that, because Sean Cano, the co-founder of this channel, he's always talking about quality more than quantity. But I'm a firm believer, being somebody that's literally uploaded, I think like now 3,000 vlogs on YouTube, there's some magic in that repetition.
Sure.
And
it's
so,
also developing a skill.
Yeah.
You can't actually get good at something. Do you think that Steph Curry got really good at shooting three-pointers by sitting on his couch?
Even he didn't get it from going to like a dope summer camp.
No.
He got it from practicing those shots over and over.
Over and over and
There you
over.
go.
And even when he's not touching the ball, he's thinking about those shots. And that's the value of quantity in and of itself is not the end game. Quantity ultimately helps you understand your own personal style, and it refines the skills. You put those two things together, and that's where the best stuff is.
There you go. Grab Creative Calling. We'll put the links all down below. Check out Chase's YouTube channels, all his socials. You should definitely follow him on Instagram. I love your photos because there's so much magic in those photos that you just wouldn't think of. But if you understand composition and framing and all that kind of stuff, any last words before we send you off to all the myriad of things I know you're busy with?
No, it's just, starting off on your creative journey, or even like refining your skills, can be scary, and there are communities out there. Creative Live is a great example. It's where more than 10 million people go to learn photography, video, filmmaking. A lot of the people that we've talked about on the broadcast today, that's where they share their wisdom. That's a good resource, and I think just grateful to be on the show. Like 3,000 videos. That's what I mean. That's one of the reasons that you're watching this right now. And if he had done 3, how many of you watched when they had put out 3 videos? How many, right? No, you probably came into the draft somewhere around 1,000 or more. And so there's so much truth in what you put out. And I just want to say thanks for having the show. Congratulations. I see you in the work that you do, and I respect and appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Hey, if you guys want to see more content from Chase, go ahead and click or tap the screen right here to visit his channel. If you want to see more interviews just like this, click or tap the screen right here. As always, we're helping build your influence, income, impact with online videos. I'll talk to you later.